mean, yeah, like, for example, one of the bars, Flannery's on East 4th, I feel like that's always a popular spot just because the parade, and it's an Irish bar anyways. It's like a very good spot to watch people probably drink a little too much. How would you describe the flavor?
Irish whiskey is a bit sweet, but it's very balanced. And it's mostly all barley, so you're not getting some of the other characteristics that get added in with bourbon.
Very interesting. Well, we'll definitely have to go drink some Jameson, etc. this Sunday. So yeah. Very exciting.
Drink responsibly. Well, I gotta tell you, since we talked about Express Deli here and we tried their corned beef sandwiches, since then I've just been chasing that high, that deliciousness.
But I think the whole gist of your story is that Clevelanders don't really need an excuse to eat corned beef.
No, it's a year-round. It's not a phenomenon at all. It's a year-round thing.
I'm Josh Duke.
And I'm Alex Darus.
And you're either watching or listening to Dine Drink CLE, the podcast where each and every week we're going to be joined by cleveland.com's best and brightest food experts, insiders, and influencers to talk all things great food and drink here in Cleveland. What are we talking about today, Alex?
Well, this Sunday is St. Patrick's Day, and if you've ever been in Cleveland for St. Patrick's Day, you know it's a pretty big deal here. I know the Green River in Chicago gets a lot of hype, but Cleveland does it up pretty well, so we're going to be talking about Irish bars, where to spend St. Patrick's Day. We're going to learn a little bit about Irish whiskey since it's a popular drink, and then talk about Cleveland's love of corned beef. So very festive episode, and we're joined by Paris Wolfe here, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about, let's get kicked off with Irish bars. So hi, Paris.
Hi, Alex. Hi, Josh.
Welcome.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
St. Patrick's Day this Sunday. Are you guys celebrating? Are you excited? Are you going to the parade?
Oh, yeah. I'll definitely be at the parade. And I got to tell you, I am super looking forward to just the unmitigated fun and drunkenness that I'm probably going to see. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, this is a very big drinking town, I feel like. So I know each and every year it's like probably the parade of the year. Definitely, right? I would say.
In Cleveland for
Yeah,
sure.
Cleveland.
And I mean, yeah, like, for example, one of the bars, Flannery's on East 4th. I feel like that's always a popular spot just because the parade, and it's an Irish bar anyways. It's like a very good spot to watch people probably drink a little too much. But also because I've been working on a story about the authentic Irish pubs and stuff in Cleveland. And I noticed that in West Park, the neighborhood of West Park, it's a huge place to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. I think just naturally there's a lot of Irish pubs and stuff over there, but a lot of good fun outside of the downtown parade scene too. The fun part about an Irish bar too is you go and you get the Irish whiskey shots and a Guinness and stuff, but a lot of them have really great food too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I grew up on 185th Street, East 185th Street, and right across the street from where I grew up is a place called Muldoon's Saloon and Eatery. And just growing up, that was the place to go. Not just because it was down the street and very, very convenient, but yeah, the corned beef there, the loaded potato skins, like they have a lot of Irish delegates. I know it has a lot of Americanized cuisine too, but like it has a focus on Irish food and drink. So like to me, I mean, I haven't really been there in my adult years, so I should really check it out for the alcohol.
Well, I mean, that's what's kind of fun about it too, is a lot of these places, they are, I mean, yeah, it's a pub, it's an Irish pub, but it tends to be some of them family friendly with the big menus. Like I know the Harp on the Detroit Shoreway, it's a very popular Irish bar, and they have a whole menu of boxties, which have you ever had a boxty? No. It is like a sandwich, but instead of bread, it's potato pancakes. So they stuff them with, you can get it with corned beef or steak, chicken, like all this different stuff. And they have a whole menu for it there. And it's like one of my favorite places to go and just grub.
That's awesome.
But I feel like at these bars too, something that like at every Irish bar, you expect certain drinks. Like you expect a Guinness, you expect an Irish whiskey. And I know, Paris, you recently wrote a story about Irish whiskey. Did you learn a lot? Did you know a lot about it going in?
I did not. Yeah. I knew I liked Jameson, and I decided to find out what the differences are because I drink a lot of bourbon. And what the experts I talked to talked about Irish whiskey being more approachable than most whiskeys.
Interesting.
Because it's made with the barley and a malted barley that give it a little more honey flavor, some stone fruit, if it's not too aged.
Yeah. And so I know we say like with the corn and the bourbon. Corn tends to make it a little bit sweeter, so bourbon's like a sweeter whiskey. How would you describe the flavor?
Irish whiskey is a bit sweet, but it's very balanced.
Mm-hmm.
And it's mostly all barley, so you're not getting some of the other characteristics that get added in with bourbon. It's not as hot. And it also is aged differently. Like in Ireland, when they put the barrels in a rick house or put them out, the weather is very consistent. Whereas in Kentucky, if you're making bourbon, it gets hot, it gets cold, and the barrels open and close. The pores in the barrels change the flavors of the bourbon a little bit more.
So is Irish whiskey tend to be aged a little bit? It can probably sit longer.
It can be aged longer.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting. I know I may not look it, but I am like 2% Irish.
Interesting.
Yeah, when I was born, I had red hair and stuff. Yeah, but anyway.
Wait, really?
Yeah, that's
we
true.
need a picture on the podcast.
But just reading your story, I was just like learning a little bit about Irish and kind of, I guess, my roots, and I didn't really realize that it was still to this day just made in Ireland. I think
it has to be
made in Ireland. And how many do you know? Like, what is it? The distilleries there? Like, how many are there? A lot? Is it just?
There's a lot of distilleries.
Yeah.
I know. Like you said, there's Jameson. I know. Proper Number 12 Irish whiskey. It's a more recent brand. That's really popular. What's the other one? Bushmills.
A lot of them. The Ohio Liquor Agency has brought a large quantity of them. They worked with Ireland's government agency to bring a lot of them to Ohio. It's limited quantities, but if you go to your liquor store, you're going to find a lot of unusual stuff on the shelves right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing is there are so many, especially with any kind of spirit. But I think also because it's made in Ireland and it's not something we're familiar with, like visiting the distilleries all the time or something like that, it is kind of worth exploring all the different brands and seeing what you actually like. It's not like you're supposed to, or you can only drink Jameson. They all have their own flavor characteristics.
I'm good with that. I wish they sold more airline bottles for a lot of the other brands.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Then we could try a lot more.
Yeah, like a little sample pack.
Yeah, so if someone wants to try some for St. Patrick's Day, cocktail recommendations.
You can do an old fashioned. I'm particularly fond of an Irish coffee, so I get a little caffeine, a little alcohol.
An Irish mule, so like a Moscow mule, but with Irish whiskey is good, or a whiskey ginger. That's pretty popular.
Ginger and lime.
Yeah. Now, one thing I've seen, like kind of the college kids getting into is something probably inappropriately named the Irish bomb, the Irish car bomb. Probably should come up with a better name for that, obviously.
Yeah.
But I understand that's Irish whiskey dropped into.
Yeah, I think it's Irish whiskey and cream dropped into a Guinness, which I've never had.
It actually sounds and looks like really fun to take.
It looks fun, but I don't know if I would want a beer when a whiskey with some dairy in it.
It does sound a little dangerous.
I prefer the Irish coffee like Paris does, or drinking a Guinness separately, or what are the other ones? Starkweather, I think, too. There's a few Irish beer brands that you can find around here too, but some people do like drinking them together. It's probably a faster way to get drunk if that's your goal on St. Patrick's Day.
with these guides that you're releasing, we should probably give them a little bit of tips or tricks of how to cure or avoid a hangover too.
Eat. Especially a lot of these bars, like they're doing, if they open early on St. Patrick's Day or stuff, they're making corned beef hash, or they have their regular menu items of like a Reuben egg roll, or boxties are very popular. And these are all hearty meals that will help you hold your alcohol. And I mean, I think the parade starts at 2 p.m. anyway, so that's a long day.
Yeah.
I know some of the bars too are doing like kegs and eggs and stuff. And it's like, people really... I think they're very excited it's on a Sunday this year. But I guess anything else that you learned about Irish whiskey that you think everyone should know, or why do you think everyone should try it?
It's interesting that malted barley and unmalted barley are both used, because historically malted barley was used and then the government decided to tax that. So the Irish went back to using more unmalted barley, so they didn't have to pay as many taxes.
And so the flavor on that, because malted, I feel like whenever I try...
The unmalted gives it a little more floral notes.
Yeah, because the malted is more kind of a
toastier.
Yeah,
Yes,
it reminds me of dessert, like or like a
mhm.
malted milkshake or something sometimes. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Very interesting. Well, we'll definitely have to go drink some Jameson, etc. this Sunday. So
Yeah.
very exciting.
Drink responsibly.
Cut.
And of course, you can't talk about St. Patrick's Day and the food and drink related to that without talking about corned beef sandwiches, which is a pretty big deal here in the Cleveland area. And to help talk about that, we have Pete Chakerian here. So welcome, Pete.
Hi.
Yeah,
Hey.
Pete, you wrote a little love letter to Cleveland's love of corned beef lately, and obviously it's a timely thing with St. Patrick's Day. But I think the whole gist of your story is that Clevelanders don't really need an excuse to eat corned beef.
No, it's a year-round. It's not a phenomenon at all. It's a year-round thing for us, and you could get them a lot of different places, a lot of different ways, but the traditional ways are best. And there are plenty of places in Cleveland to get them. Not just on the Green Beer Day, as I called it.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. And why is it such a Cleveland thing?
Well, 10% of the population here in Cleveland is of Irish descent. So I would actually argue that that number might be a little higher than it was when I first sampled for the column. But you have a lot of Irish folks here in Cleveland, and that's as good a reason as any.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because also being Black and Irish, and the Black community that I can tell so far, they here really dig corned beef sandwiches too. You know, it's not just like traditionally Irish
Yeah.
people, but I think it just spread into all the cultures here. If you've grown up in Cleveland, it doesn't really matter if you're Irish or not. It's just something that has taken a foothold here, I feel like.
For sure. It's like
Yeah.
a pierogi almost
Yeah,
or something.
exactly.
And then I think one of the big things that a lot of people might maybe not understand or be confused about is corned beef versus pastrami. So can you give us a little lesson on the difference between these two deli meats?
Well, aside from the fact that they each have a different name, pastrami is from a different cut of the cow than the beef brisket. It's from a place called the decal or the navel area. So it by proxy is a little bit fattier than the lean texture that you would get out of corned beef. So there's one major difference there. And then you also have the added fact that it's smoked on top.
Pastrami is smoked,
correct, on top of being slow cooked.
Well, I gotta tell you, since we talked about Express Deli here and we tried their corned beef sandwiches, prior to that, I was not really a big corned beef guy, not a big corned beef sandwich guy. But since then, I've just been chasing that high, that deliciousness.
It is really good
Yeah,
from
it
Express
is.
Deli. You got to
Yeah.
go to Joe's Deli. I know that's what you wrote about in yours, but
Yes.
Joe's Deli is the best.
Yeah.
Personally.
So I've had a couple of hits, a couple of misses in my journey to duplicate that experience. So I was just wondering, like, what do you guys think makes a good or bad or a so-so corned beef sandwich?
What do you think, Alex?
I think it's two questions
Okay.
because there's a good corned beef, like just the meat part,
Okay.
and then the sandwich. And I think the sandwich for me, as someone who tends, like, I'll usually order a Reuben because I like all the extra stuff on it. Is like a ratio, like the bread to meat ratio. I don't like when it's too bready. I don't like when there's too much Thousand Island on it. And it has to be like a good sauerkraut. It can't, like, texturally holds up. But I guess, like, as far as the meat part, what do you think helps a certain corned beef from one restaurant stand out from another, to your opinion?
I think there are so many different variations from place to place in terms of the seasoning and the marinade and the length of time that it's being cooked and how lean the meat is, and all those things kind of marry together. One of the better ones I've had recently was at Larder Delicatessen, which I didn't mention in the column because I'm working out and have some future columns planned. But theirs has this incredible texture in and of itself. I mean, you talk about composition of a sandwich. Certainly that's like the base of it. And just, I mean, perfect and not even needed to be sliced thin. They serve it pretty thick on their sandwich, which is wonderful, but it's also so incredibly soft and unctuous. It's just delicious.
Yeah.
And you don't need to have it shaved real thin like you see in a lot of other places, like you would get at a Slyman's.
Yeah, I know that just goes into the ratio thing matters a lot until it's Slyman's, because that's like a different category of its own.
It really is.
It's all about the meat there.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think so far, whenever I'm trying one, if it's really dry and it's just too meaty and not enough sauce or flavor in it, it's just really not great. But I think to your point, the ratio I think is really the key for me that I'm noticing so far, because when I had that Express Deli, it was like the perfect ratio.
Yeah.
It really was. It had a nice little, not sauce, but it had a little moisture, to it that really just kind of made it pop with the bread too.
Yeah, no, I know. That's why I'm not a big corned beef on rye person, because I need like a condiment, but that's probably a me thing. What about you, Pete? Are you a Reuben or?
I definitely like a Reuben. I like when the bread is a little bit thicker cut. It's not your standard cut.
Yeah.
It's just ever so slightly larger. And then when it gets either flat topped or toasted, it seems like that helps to sort of contain the moisture a little bit better. I like them to be a little bit moist or leaning on that moist side, but I do like the bread to be a bit crisp.
Yeah.
But I also want it to be a bit toothsome and have some give to it. I don't want it to be like a backyard barbecue burger or something like that, where like you can tell the bottom bun is starting to come away from it at the end near those last couple of bites. It's got to hold up for the entirety of the meal, at least as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think that's a good point for sure. I guess is there any, since you've been also trying out corned beef, any places outside of Express Deli that you've enjoyed?
Yeah, there is one I found on Uber Eats. Don't kill me, but it's called Uncle Abe's Chicken.
Oh.
And yeah, I know Uncle Abe's Chicken, but their number one item was their highest rated item on Uber Eats was their corned beef sandwich, and ordered that. Was great.
Ooh.
Not as good in other places, but I'm just gonna leave that.
Yeah,
where
no,
that
we
is.
only want to say the good ones. Yeah, no, I think that's. I know I already talked about the Heart, but they have really good. That's a great place to get a corned beef sandwich. Or as I talked about before, in a box tea. That's like my death row meal, I think, would be a Reuben box
Really?
tea. It's so good.
Whoa.
It's so good. I don't know, though. Now I'll like overthink it.
I don't know. That's a really fun thing we should talk about. Death row meals.
Yeah.
Like, what would it be to have here?
No, I think the other one I said that another dish I said that about was at Prosperity Social Club. I think they call it the ethnic platter there, but it's like there's stuffed cabbage and noodles, pierogi, like it has everything. And I was like, this would be it for me. Like I'm good with this.
I'm a huge fan of theirs, and I love their fish fry. I mean,
It's
you
like
can't
the
talk
best.
about St. Patrick's Day without fish fry, but that's another one of those things they always have. They have on Fridays, and Clevelanders love it.
And yeah, I mean that's the great thing about especially so many of these Irish pubs and restaurants too, is like if you can't get in on Sunday, which obviously everyone's going to be trying to go in, you can enjoy it all year round. It doesn't have to be a St. Patrick's Day thing. So
Yeah. And it was funny because when we shared your story on Facebook, you just see people just sounding off in the comments about their favorite corned beef sandwich, recommending their friends and family drive 8 hours from wherever they, live in the United States to come and try it. And it's just clearly just.
No, some of those comments too. People are like, "Oh, you got to drive 3 hours where I live now to get a good corned beef," and it's like you sometimes forget what Cleveland we have. Well, I remember when I moved to New England, it was like you couldn't get a pierogi. Like I was like, I was buying Mrs. T's frozen just to scratch the itch, but it's not the same.
No, that definitely doesn't work. Yeah, one other thing that I just want to mention really quickly, I did focus on Joe's with that last column that I did, and I was really, enthusiastic about that. But if you do head in that direction on Sunday, you'll be sad to find out that they're closed. So it's important for me to tell you now that they're not going to be open, so you may need to make other plans.
Great hangover Monday lunch spot, though.
Well, it really is, and that's probably where I'll be. Not hungover, but I'll be there probably on Monday, avoiding the crowd.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you so much for watching or listening to the Dine Drink CLE podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Dine Drink CLE, and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at cleveland.com/newsletters. Thanks.